lot of great things. Taking the next step, that's what it's all about.
Hey, happy hump day, happy Wednesday. I know it's like some bad weather coming through different places, so I don't know how our live chat is going to look tonight, but be sure to hit it up because we love to see the comments from y'all. And I wanted to go ahead and ask y'all to go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button if you're not already subscribed, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any content. We have a hot show tonight, so I definitely think that I think it's going to rile some people up, but in a good way. And like we mentioned last week, we do have a new segment that's been added, a Q&A. So we'll take maybe 3 to 5 questions from the audience. So go ahead and start adding your questions in the live chat now, and then we'll address some of them later on in the show. So my name is C'Chi, and I'm the host here on the Crimson Dynasty. We are one of the shows on the Bama Standard Network. We have quite a few. So our week is almost completely filled up with shows, but that's a good thing. We do have a couple sponsors, one of which I want to go ahead and shout out, which is Workspace Solutions. So visit their website, which we have listed below in the banner. If you need any type of marketing team, or if you want to enhance your online presence, both personally and from a business perspective, contact them if you have any questions and let them know that we sent you there. Now, we do have 2 co-hosts on the Crimson Dynasty, which I know that y'all are very familiar with, and they are also part of other shows as well here on the network. So we'll let them promote those shows towards the end of our episode tonight. But I'll start off with Dan James IV. He is the lead recruiting analyst for the Bama Standard Network, not just for Crimson Dynasty, not just for his other show, The Final Whistle, but for the entire network. So anytime you may have questions, regarding recruits, maybe, and not even just football, but basketball, anything else, be sure to drop it in the chat and we'll try to address it. And then also our other co-host, Hannah Stevens. So she's been on a few college football shows. She's actually on a couple other shows here on the network that you may have seen recently on Monday and Friday. So we'll get more information about those later. She has a radio show on ESPN Radio in Huntsville, Alabama. She wasn't on last week, but she is back tonight. So we have some great things to talk about. And I'm gonna keep my eyes on the chat. I'm not gonna respond to anything though just yet, because I know Auburn thinks that they're relevant, and hopefully they're not in our chat tonight, losing the way they did to Cal. But we'll address that a little later too, because I feel like trolling somebody tonight. But I wanted to just go ahead and dive in. Let's just go ahead and talk about things. Let's talk about our upcoming game this weekend against Wisconsin. I don't want us to harp too much on our game against South Florida, because I feel like our other shows on the network have already kind of addressed that. So let's just dive right into Wisconsin. So a couple things that I wanted to mention, and then I want to get y'all's takes on it. So far, of course, we're on the 3rd week of college football, at least for Alabama and a few other schools. But Wisconsin so far, they've already played Western Michigan and then South Dakota. And so in both games, they only won by 14 points. And so that's one thing worth noting. They went 7-5 in their regular season last year, and then they lost to LSU in a bowl game. So they did make it to a bowl game. They had a bowl game last year, but they lost to LSU. But one thing to notice, that the last time that we played Wisconsin, to my memory, is 2015. And so that was our first game of the season. Actually, we played that out in Texas and we beat them 35-17. But that's also the same season where we played Michigan State, I believe, in the Cotton Bowl. We beat them like 38-0. And then, of course, we won the Natty. Like, we played Clemson. And of course, we won the Natty because that's just what we do. So that's a couple things to note there regarding our last, matchup with Wisconsin, and then just kind of how things played out. We didn't go completely undefeated that year. We lost to Ole Miss, if I remember correctly. But Jake Coker, he was our quarterback that year when we played Wisconsin, and he threw for over 200 yards. But remember, that was the same year that Derrick Henry and I believe Kenyon Drake, they had a big game in terms of, the rushing yards when we played Wisconsin that year, combined over 225 rushing yards. And then, of course, Eddie Jackson had a huge interception. He ran it back for about 40 yards. So I want to get y'all's takes really quickly on just what you remember about that matchup. 2015, literally almost 10 years ago. That's crazy. Like, it doesn't even feel like that much time has passed. But what are y'all thoughts on that matchup? And then do you feel like there are any comparisons or contrasts with our matchup this weekend against them? Hannah, I'll kick it off with you on this one first, and then I'll toss it to you, Dan.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things to note. This matchup I'm very excited for. We talked about it a little bit on Monday, and for me, this is the perfect, I think, first big game. We'll just say call it that for the Crimson Tide. I'm really glad this Saturday's game's not against Georgia. I think Wisconsin is the perfect game for us to really have a chance to prove ourselves, kind of fix the mistakes we have to make. But I'll say this about Wisconsin. They're a sneaky team. Wisconsin is historically, especially when you look back decades ago, they've always been a really good team. So for me, Alabama versus Wisconsin is going to be a big matchup. And, the guys I'm going to talk about, I'm worried about. And I'll just say this. This is going to be a game that I think Alabama obviously will win, but I think it's going to be a much better matchup than a lot of people think. This is not Alabama and Wisconsin are not the same teams in 2015. And so for me, I'm super excited about this. And, can you want me to go over my players now, or are we waiting on that?
No. We'll do that next. Yeah. We'll do that next.
Hey, listen, I'm so excited. Like, I really am.
No, but I like what you said, because like you said, us matching up against Wisconsin this weekend, you can't compare that. It's not an apples to apples comparison like our game against South Florida or Western Kentucky. But like you said, it's good that we have them before our first bye week of the season, and then also before we play Georgia. So I like what you said there. You're going to say something else?
I was going to say something else too. The only thing I'm bummed about this weekend is that I'm not in Wisconsin for this game. This is definitely an atmosphere I've always wanted to be at. They have like jump around, like they do that in the fourth quarter. I don't know if you've seen that.
No.
You've got to Google Wisconsin fourth quarter jump around. It is seriously one of the best college football traditions behind Dixieland Delight. But it's incredible. The energy's there, and they sell those cheese curds in the stadium. So I'm really bummed. The cheese lover in me is like, I wish I was there. But no, I'm very excited for this game.
No, I would totally not be jumping around. Like, I'll be looking at them like, if y'all don't get away from me, like this, first of all, this is too much chaos and disorder, Satan. Like, absolutely not. That is ridiculous. They have nothing to jump around about.
Just
but when
YouTube it, it's really cool.
Okay, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I can see myself, jumping around, having a good time.
I can see y'all doing it. I can see me sitting up there, like, looking at them like, y'all better get away from me, because and don't come over here jumping by me. But Dan, what are your thoughts on our matchup against Wisconsin 2015? And then do you see any similarities between that Wisconsin versus what we're going to face this weekend?
Yeah, one thing I remember in particular was the safety. I can forget his name, number 7. He hit Derrick Henry. And he was so out of it, he got up and went to the offensive huddle. Do y'all remember that?
I think I do remember that. I forgot the name, though.
He hit Derrick Henry, and he was out for the game. You know what I'm saying? He had a concussion. That's one play I remember. That was total domination by Alabama. That's what I want to see this go around. That's for us to establish our will in the running game. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Let's impose our will on them. I think we could do that. This is the type of game, that, Saban's defense used to love this type of offense that we'll be seeing. But I don't know. It's going to be, I think we're going to try to shrink the game into about both sides. I don't know. We'll probably still take our little chunk plays, but I'm looking forward to it.
It looks like safety Michael Caputo. That was his name?
That was his name, yeah.
That rings a bell? Okay. Yeah, he was confused. He was like, I shouldn't have done that. I ain't going to do that no more.
He was like, I'm okay. He was
I know. Like, no, you ain't.
I'm okay. I got this.
Right. Yeah, no. I agree. Well, so speaking of which, and I'm glad that we kind of have that previous matchup, although it's been almost 10 years ago, to compare and contrast. But let's talk about certain players on the current Wisconsin team that we may need. And shout out to Jimmy Clay. Thank you for the super chat. Roll Tide Roll. I got to meet him this past weekend, actually, in Tuscaloosa. So shout out to you. We got to meet him in person.
Yeah, enjoy seeing you, brother.
Yeah.
Who's Firecracker, by the way, Jimmy? Am I Firecracker?
Shout out Eddie Rose.
Yeah, shout out to Eddie Rose.
It says, "What's up, Firecracker?"
Yeah, he's probably talking about you. Maybe it could be either one of us. Shout out to Eddie Rose. Thank you for the super chat. We really appreciate it. And I will say too, like we said, we do have the Q&A segment towards the end. But if you have any particular comments or anything that's urgent that you really want to get out there, hit us up with a super chat, and it'll automatically be displayed. We always give priority to those. So just an FYI. But I do want to move on to the Badgers players that we may need to kind of be on the watch out for. And I'm going to start with you, Dan, on this particular topic, and then I'll move over to Hannah, and then I'll give my take. Dan, are there any guys in particular that you feel like we need to be on the watch for?
Yeah, definitely. One is Tyler Van Dyke,
which is the quarterback.
Transfer, the quarterback, 6'4", 225 pounds senior. I think this is like his fifth year senior. He started out with Miami. We faced him before. He played garbage time a couple of years ago against us with Bryce Young down in, I think we played in Mercedes-Benz, wherever that game was. We played Miami. And, threw for 2,700 yards last year, but I look and found something interesting. Over his career, he has nearly a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. So I think it's an opportunistic time for us, very opportunistic, So, another one is a guy that I wanted out of the portal, but he never went into the portal. But he was a guy that we talked about on the other show. Is Ricardo Hallman. He was a guy, Coach Mo Linguist coached last year. And when he left, we were looking for guys to enter the portal, but he never did. Ricardo Hallman, 5'10" corner out of Miami, Florida. But 7 interceptions last year. He will jump some routes, so you have to be careful, Jalen, when you're throwing his way. One other guy is the safety, Hunter Wohler. He's a box safety. He's a thumper. He comes up. I think he led the team in tackles last year with 140. Another senior, big time player. I was surprised he didn't actually go into the draft. I'm pretty sure he had at least a 3rd round draft grade. I don't know if he can improve much on that this year, but those are 3 guys that stand out to me.
Right. And I like that you mentioned those 3 in particular, because it was certain things that stood out to me, like their quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke. So this is his first year at Wisconsin. And I from what I saw during the time that he was at Miami, he had 2 seasons where he threw for almost 3,000 yards. And even in their game this season against South Dakota, he had a really long completed pass. It seems like he likes to try to stretch the field. He likes to throw the ball. Maybe he'll run here and there, but I think that is something worth mentioning. You mentioned that cornerback, the Ricardo guy. Now this guy, this guy is something serious. Yeah. And if you look at his numbers and you compare his 2022 season with 2023, it's a huge improvement. So that in itself shows, it at least makes me think that he's kind of on that upward trajectory. So we need to kind of be on the watch for him as well. And then when you mentioned the Hunter Wohler guy, he actually made some comments. He said in an interview recently that our matchup this weekend is going to be a test for them. He's like, it's a great team that's coming to Wisconsin. And he, like you said, he had over 100 total tackles, 2 interceptions last year, etc. So those are some good guys. And I'm glad that you kind of touched on their secondary a little bit, as far as, the safety Hunter, and then Ricardo, the cornerback. So I like those. Hannah, who did you have on your list?
We're going to start with running back Cade Yakimelli, because I want to say something about him. He is one of those guys that we talk about Alabama, how you have to trust the coaches, right? And for me, I think, and I was going to try to see if I could find the exact city he was in, because it really was cracking me up, the pronunciation of it. But anyway, but he started off as safety and transitioned to running back. And he actually had the opportunity this season to really prove himself. Fickell brought in his own coaches, and that's always a worrisome thing. I mean, I know Alabama players have felt similarly, like, am I going to have to switch positions, or the coach is going to want me here? And the coaches that Fickell brought in really saw Yakimelli. And I really hope I'm pronunciating his name correctly, because you know how Wisconsin, Yakimelli, and you know how they say it like they're like Yakimelli, so hopefully I'm saying his name right. But he did a really good job so far this season, and he is a really good running back. He has the build of a defender, but the speed of a running back. And so as you can imagine, he's been pretty hard for teams to stop so far this year, throwing up some pretty good numbers. I was trying to compare him to last year, but he ran for 8 carries for 73 yards, which may not seem like a lot, but Wisconsin's not necessarily a running dominant team. But whenever they needed the short yardage gains, whether it was 3rd and 1, 2nd and 3, he was the guy that gave the ball, and he was able to break through the line. So Cade Yakamele is going to be a guy that our defensive line has to stop. That was a little frustrating to watch last week against USF. Our defensive line not stopping the short yardage first downs. Like, that's really like when we had them 3rd and 2, 2nd and 4, like we let them get the first down, and we cannot let a guy like Yakamele be able to run it up the middle. So this is going to be a good test. He's a good player. I don't know if you've watched any of his film, but he's very impressive. He's very stout, but very fast, and he could actually put up a fight against the Crimson Tide. We'll see what happens. Hopefully our defensive line decides to sew up and not stay in Tuscaloosa, but we shall see. The other guy I had was linebacker Tackett Curtis, and the reason I like this kid is because he is a comeback story. Okay. He was originally at USC, which is who in 2 weeks Wisconsin plays. So he transferred. He was in the portal. Actually, a lot of teams wanted Curtis from the portal. Mm-hmm. Wisconsin got him, and he has been nothing but an asset for them. And their starting linebacker got ejected last Saturday. So Curtis has actually took a spot. Not only did he show up, but he stood out. He had 5 tackles in just a short period of time that he was in. And so for me, Curtis has, when we were talking about this on Monday, Curtis has the opportunity to actually keep this job because the starting guys that are in these positions on defense, they're older and they're kind of complacent. These younger guys, and by the way, Curtis had to take some time off because he had a hernia he had to have surgery for. So Curtis put in the work, transferred, and he is that eager beaver, I guess you would call it, that wants the opportunity to showcase himself and show himself. And for me, Curtis is the player to watch because he knows that it only takes one game to completely change the trajectory of your life and your career. And so playing a team like Alabama and having a good showing, I mean, he had 5 tackles last week, if it one for loss. So if he can actually perform well defensively, maybe create some turnovers, maybe get an interception, whatever he can do. If he can do that, then Curtis may not only be the game changer for Wisconsin, but he actually could make a name for himself coming into the NFL draft. But, I'll tell you this, regardless of what team a player plays for, if they have a comeback story like, a rough upbringing or an injury or whatever, I'm here for it. So I'm super happy for him, even from just a human perspective, because having to recover from hernia surgery is not easy. So anyway, just going to say he did a fantastic job last week. And, I'll say this has been a controversial topic all week because people being Luke Fickell, the Wisconsin head coach, very upset about the targeting, how you get ejected and then you're out for the first half. But, it's what happens.
Well, and we'll get into that next, actually, because we need to transition to our players. But you mentioned one guy in particular, their running back, Cade Yakamele, the guy that I had on my list, and I mentioned him because the guy that I had on my radar is another running back, Chez Mellusi. Yeah. And so combined, already this season they already have over 200 rushing yards just between Chez and Cade. So that's one thing worth noting. But Chez, now he played at Clemson 2019 and 2020, and then he transferred to Wisconsin, and he had a big season his first year at Wisconsin with over 800 rushing yards, and he already has over 130 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns this season. So that's definitely worth mentioning. I do believe that they're going to try to run the ball, and I think because of our game against South Florida and somewhat being exposed just to some degree as far as not being able to stop the run, I could definitely see them trying to get some some yards on the ground. But then another guy that I had on my radar as well is one of their wide receivers, Will Pauling. So this guy, he played at Cincinnati 2021 and 2022, and then he transferred to Wisconsin. He had over 800 receiving yards during his first year at Wisconsin, which was last year. And then he had 6 touchdowns last year. So far this season, he has about 100 receiving yards. So I think he's going to be their target receiver. I'm not sure who else they're going to play. Not as many of them that have, as good of stats right now. They haven't had the best season over the last few years per se, but I do believe that Will is going to be one of their main, go-to guys in terms of plays in the air. So that's going to be really interesting. I think the guys that we named overall, those are going to be, the ones that we see more than anyone out on the field this weekend. I think they're going to try to get creative, but I really hope, and this kind of segues into our next topic, but I think we have another super chat. Jimmy Clay, shout out to you. Johanna, you're on a mission. Don't give up. Kick it. So I think y'all have y'all like side conversation. So, but I do want to mention, let me just make sure.
I'm muted. I was saying he saw my Facebook post. I'm in
okay
right now. So
gotcha. Okay. Well, then that segues into the Alabama players that we believe will have the biggest impact, which of course all of them will, but any in particular on both sides of the ball that we think, are going to show up the most. So I'll kick it off and then I'll toss it to you, Hannah, and then Dan. So I believe, and I'm going to start with the defense because I know a lot of people have kind of been talking about how South Florida was able to run on us. One thing in particular, I believe that we need to try to force Tyler Van Dyke to throw the ball. I think that because he does, like Dan, I think you mentioned his like that 2-to-1 ratio as far as the interceptions and all of that. I think that we can use that almost as leverage. So try to force him to throw the ball. They do like to run the ball. Even looking at Chads and Cade, just so far this season, over 200 combined rushing yards. So I don't, we need whatever we can do to stop them from running against us like South Florida did, because we got Georgia, so we got Frazier, we got Etienne. A lot of people call him Etienne, but that's a French name. Is Etienne. I hate that. Like, it really bothers me when I hear people say Etienne, because it's the French name for Steven. So it's actually Etienne, but that's neither here nor there, because I know here we like to say stuff differently. So, but I do believe that we need to try to force him to throw the ball. And I think because of that, it's going to be a big game for our secondary if we can do that. I do still think that, and I wish we could have seen a little bit more of it, in our game against South Florida, where we kind of, we're fast off the edge. Guys like Quandarius Robinson, Quay Russaw, Keanu Coote, have them fast off the edge, put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. I mean, technically, we did have quite a few sacks in our game against South Florida, but I do think that, we can do more. I want to see us with some pick sixes. So my fingers are crossed for that as well. But in terms of offense, I believe that our O-line has something to prove, because it was a lot of talk before the season started about how, there's so much more discipline now, and then all the penalties. And to be honest, a lot of the penalties that we saw, and I'm not trying to, just call them out, but I do think that it's worth mentioning. I think Formby, he had like 4 penalties, and then Vandermark had 3. And so it's just that discipline side of things, mental errors, miscues, that has to be fixed, and thank God we weren't playing Georgia last week, because that would have really been a problem. I think our run game needs to be strong. What we did in the fourth quarter against South Florida, that's what we need to be doing against Wisconsin. And I think we need to be consistent with it. Right now, the NCAA has Alabama ranked number 13 in terms of rushing offense. And then, the only other SEC team that's ranked higher than us is Tennessee at number 12. And then we're ranked number 7 in scoring offense, which is really good, but we're ranked 17 in scoring defense. So I want to see us improve. We saw Keon Sabbs show up against Western Kentucky with those interceptions. We need to see some pick sixes, because that's a part of the Bama standard. And I'm ready to see us, I'm ready to see it. So Hannah, who do you think on both sides of the ball has, I guess, more to prove, and it's going to have a big game? Because I know we're going to have our players of the game later in the show, but who do you feel like has more to prove in this game?
This is a hard one, because it's kind of both, but I think for me, Wilkin Formby, I think he's probably he has the most to prove, but I think he may actually be the most improved, because I don't know if you saw what Booker was saying about Wilkin Formby, but when you're faced with criticism, you have 2 ways to respond. You can own up to it and grow, or you can cower down and be like, I can't do this. And Wilkin Formby has taken the higher road. He has been in film. He's trying to go back over the basics. And Booker said this, it all comes down to foot placement, where your hands are, how you're moving. Like, it's all fundamentals. And I said this preseason, that Alabama has to focus on the fundamentals to win games. And this is exactly what it is. It's what it was last season. We've got to get our guys to be so focused on the fundamentals that they don't make silly mistakes. I mean, we had way too many penalties last week. Half of them should never even happened. Some of them, they're going to be called. Like, you can't have a game with no penalties. Maybe in the beginning of the Saban era when they were scared to get a penalty. Yeah. But, point is this. Wilkin Formby, I think, can show up and prove that he's the right guy for this spot. And I know Dan's going to be talking on someone else here shortly. But, the thing is this. He doesn't come off as a coward to me. He comes off as a guy that you give him a challenge, he's going to face it. I mean, he had to work for this position. Mm-hmm. And just because he has a bad game doesn't mean he's going to have, he's a bad player. I mean, he's still a young player. There's still a lot of time to grow, progress, learn. And, for me, I think he could be a guy that we really watch and say this Saturday, like, wow, like he seriously improved. Because I'll be honest with you, if there was one game that Formby could have had a subpar performance in, it was USF. It can't be against Georgia. It can't be against Wisconsin. Like, there's no other game to make those silly mistakes, because what's going to happen is our defense stopped any progressing of the, what do you call it, when they got the momentum that USF got when we messed up, right? So we were able to compensate. But with a team like Georgia next week, we're not going to have the freedom to make a mistake and not have to pay for it, right? They're going to score with our mistake. So anyway, that's the first player. And then the other guy is Jalen Milroe. I think he really has to have a good game, because I don't think he has played to his capability. I really don't. Statistically, he's where he's been in his career, but Jalen Milroe is capable of so much more than what he's done. And I don't think we've seen the spark and the confidence and even the verbal leadership that I think I expected to see from him so far this season. He's a great player, don't get me wrong, but I wanted to go into week 2 against USF with no hesitancy on saying Jalen Milroe is the quarterback, QB1 whatsoever. You can look in the comments right now. I mean, we'll talk about it later Q&A, but I mean, there's questions that people have about Milroe. So for me, this is a game that he has to show up. He cannot make mistakes, and he has to read through all of his options. Okay. When you have a quarterback that first guy isn't open and he runs, that's great for a few situations. But when a team knows that you can get a quarterback to run, when their first guy's not open, they're going to double team Ryan Williams 100%. So for me, those are the two guys that we have to, Lord willing, that they will have a big game. Wilkin Formby, because I think he's going to recover from USF. He's going to come out and, Lord willing, have no mistakes. And then Jalen Hurts. I mean, I keep calling him Jalen Hurts. Look at me. That's how much I love him. Okay. He didn't have the best week 1 performance in the NFL, but Jalen Milroe. Okay, we just have all the Jalens. Okay, the Jalens just want to come to Tuscaloosa, but Jalen Milroe really has to have a big game, and I think he will have a big game on Saturday, because I think he let all naysayers know. He needs to, I think, let himself know that he is QB1, and I think he's going to use that motivation, and I think he'll have an excellent game. So let's see what happens.
Yep. I agree. Okay, I was just looking at the comments. I saw some.
Sorry, I rambled a lot, but I'm passionate about this.
Okay, well, we can, so that's who you have. So then, Dan, who do you have? And I'm curious if they're different from who we already named.
Yeah, and a point, you made about Wilkin Formby, Hannah. Yeah, you remember a guy we were criticizing like this last year. That was Caden Proctor.
Yep.
But he fought through it. He improved. It's just, you have bad game. Players have bad game. But a problem I saw was in his initial first step, getting up out of his set. I don't know if y'all remember, we had Wesley Britt on this show, and he was talking about, getting out your set. Your first step needs to be forward. And he was coming straight up, and that's where he was having problems at. And, we should have been running the ball more, firing off the ball. That's what one guy I'm going to talk about comes in, and that's Elijah Pritchett. two things that allowed him to evolve and have the game that it did, and that was one, he was fresh in the fourth quarter, and two, we're running the ball. That's what he does best. He's a run block. He's a road grader. And that played right into his hands. But I expect. I don't know. Maybe Wilkin Formby will start again. I don't know. But I think we should see more of Elijah Pritchett going forward. As the sixth offensive lineman. But this is his type of game. We got to establish the run. Let's hit teams in the mouth. And guys like that, he's the type of player you need against Georgia. Guys like that tend to have their best games against Georgia. Our lineman that, even Caden Proctor last year, one of his best games was against Georgia.
True.
And Pritchett is a similar player. He's a run blocker. You know what I'm saying? And we should be able to have success against Georgia with him in the lineup.
Right.
On the other side of the ball, I want to talk about a player. This is his game. I think this is the type of game he relishes in, and that's Jehiem Oatis. He only had 2 tackles so far this year. I expect that number to triple at least. This type of game, a little more between the tackles. So I expect him to have a bigger impact because we have a quarterback that sits in the pocket. It allows our interior guys to be able to push the pocket and get to the quarterback. We got guys they can fire off the edge. So this is the type of game I expect a player like Jehiem Oatis to really step up and grow up.
Right. I like what you said. And speaking of defense, while we're on defense, let's kind of touch on where we feel like, some of the defensive mistakes that were made against South Florida. Shout out to Linda P. This is for C'Chi. Happy belated birthday. Thank you. I enjoyed my birthday in Tuscaloosa. I mean, it's always good to see us get a win, right? I went to Tuscaloosa last year and we lost to Texas my birthday weekend. So that was like, I'm like, really? So when we were in the stadium this past weekend, I'm like, Lord, we better not lose this game because I'm going to know something. Because Coach Saban, if he in his little new office he got, we will have to have us a discussion like, sir, I don't know, we may need you out of retirement or something. So, but thank you so much, Linda. I really appreciate it. Okay. So let's talk about the defensive mistakes. We talked about just that run game, just allowing South Florida to run so much. And speaking of which, their quarterback, like we literally broke this down last week regarding Byram. I mean, this guy had over 100 rushing yards and he literally accounted for half of the total rushing yards in that game. Like I believe that he himself had more rushing yards than all the other running backs combined. Like that's crazy, but we knew that going into it. So I'm just like, we know that he likes to use his feet. Like you can't tell me that their O-line was too much, I guess, like better than our D line. Like we could, you know what I mean? Like you can't tell me that their O-line is that much better than what we brought to the field on the other side of the line. Like I cannot, I'm not going to believe that. Technically we did sack Byram, I believe 4 times, but clearly it wasn't, enough to stop. And thank God he wasn't as elite as certain other, quarterbacks that are good on their feet, because I mean, he probably could have got more yards. So it was just ridiculous. I believe that our secondary played well for the most part. I mean, we only allowed about 100 yards in the air, and that could also be because of them just not having depth as far as their receivers. But Dan, I'll start with you. What improvements do you think that we need to see in terms of defense? I know you kind of touched on some of it, but what else are you seeing in terms of defense?
Definitely, receivers running free in our secondary. That's something we have to stop ASAP. One time we let a guy get behind on a inside release, I think it was 16 Red Morgan. He let a guy beat him inside, with no safety help over the top. And the guy got like 5 yards separation, but of course Byron Brown couldn't hit him. But he missed several throws that if he would have made, it would have been a different game. You know what I'm saying? So that's something we definitely got to clean up immediately. Another thing is, quit getting beat to the edges. You know what I'm saying? This is not the type of personnel we'll be facing as South Florida, but those two things are two things we definitely have to clean up.
I agree. And yeah, those are some really, especially the edge. That was something that really bothered me in that game. Really quickly, because I saw that just so that y'all know, that Darius Fountain guy, he pulled that same stunt, the one that y'all saw in the chat. He just got blocked, but he pulled that same stunt last season. For some reason, he literally had something personal against Jalen Milroe. It was the same thing, Dan. Remember last year when we would have our show and he literally would troll even like our Alabama football Instagram. Like, he just hates Jalen Milroe, and I don't understand what's so personal there. But my thing is like, sir, like, you ain't out there on that field. What are you doing? You in somebody's basement, most likely. Like, sir, please keep it stepping. Like,
on him.
yeah, no, they clown him, so he's blocked
hilarious.
now. Yeah, it's really ridiculous. But Chris said, thank you, Jimmy Clay, for another super chat. Love the show. Appreciate all of you. Roll Tide forever. Thank you. It look like y'all trying to compete with them super chats. We here for it though. Okay. Hannah, what defensive corrections do you want to see, and what do you, I guess, anticipate seeing this weekend?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I was not impressed with our D-line. I think, in full transparency, we got outworked and outcoached. And that is a concern. They had 21 first downs. That's a lot. Okay. You already mentioned the yardage in the air, the yardage on the ground. That should have never happened. And the thing is this, we had the home field advantage and we still played that poorly. If we would have gone down to South Florida again, which, by the way, I don't think USF's actually in South Florida, which doesn't make sense to me. But
no.
All of that to say, I'm being a realist. I'm a Bama fan, in and out, love Crimson Tide football, obviously Roll Tide roll. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like everything's hunky-dory, because we should be playing a lot better football than we have been. And I don't know if it's because the boys overlooked the USF game looking to Wisconsin, if they didn't think it was going to be a big deal. But in my mind, it should have been, because we almost lost on the road last year. It just feels like, for whatever reason, USF is always that game that we struggle in. So maybe we come back from that. And, I know we won, but it does not feel like a win. Coming out of that game, you look at the scoreboard, we won, but it did not feel that way, especially when we had to score as many points as we did in the fourth quarter to win. So for me, the defensive line has got to stop the running game, because Wisconsin is a good team. Wisconsin's O-line is going to be an issue. And so for me, the defensive line is going to have to get it together. Okay. And one thing about our defensive line is they're going to be triggered by Wisconsin's snap count. If you've been watching the games, but they're trying to draw teams offside. So our defensive line has got to be in sync, no penalties, and we've got to stop them. We had more time of possession by 3 minutes against a team like USF. If we were to give Wisconsin 28 minutes time of possession, that is a big deal. Okay. They're going to put up some points. And so for me, defensive line, I agree with you. Our secondary did well for what they had to do with, because I think at the end, by the time USF was in the fourth quarter, they realized they didn't need to throw it deep. All they had to do was run it. And for whatever reason, we couldn't really do a good job stopping it. So my two things are going to be defensive line, but also our linebackers. Wisconsin's going to try to do a lot of slant routes, quick routes, quick out routes as well. And we've got to be able to stop them. And the last thing I'm going to say is I would be willing to start an NIL fund if we can get someone to remind these kids that you tackle like this and not like this. If I see one more player tackle like this or trying to strip the ball, I'm going to drive down to Tuscaloosa and make them run towers myself, make them run stadiums. Okay. Because go ahead.
But on that note, you know what I'm saying? That Justin Jefferson tackle was a textbook tackle.
No, I agree. Yeah,
yeah.
But that's not the type of tackle I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like, that's a legit tackle. This, grabbing the uniform, trying to get them down, and them getting at their 3, 4, 5 yards is not going to cut it. Because the reality is Wisconsin is a better team and a bigger team than USF is. So, I think we're going to win. I think it's going to be a great game. But like I said, I'm not trying to be the negative Nancy. I'm just trying to be the realist Ray Lynn, because, I think that, there are some legitimate concerns still on defense that we need to have dealt with and answered this weekend, because we cannot play the way we played last week in the SEC. It will not be a pretty situation.
Right. Well, I'm going to say this. I'm glad that because if we think about this year compared to last year, it was that second game. And I think that the advantage of this year is that, we played Western Kentucky, and of course, playing a team like that, blowing them out the way that we did, it can literally make you think that, okay, we're good, we're solid. The problem last year was that our second game was Texas, and that's when we got exposed, kind of like how we kind of got exposed against South Florida. And so I'm kind of glad that it happened the way that it did, and as far as like timing and who we matched up against, because to be quite honest, the way we played against South Florida, not saying that it was horrible, of course, but just some of those mistakes that were made, you cannot make that against a Tennessee, against, really anybody else in terms of the SEC matchups that we have. Forget Auburn, but I think about them, they're not even relevant. But I do believe that from a timing perspective, I'm kind of glad that it happened when it did, so that we can kind of see some of the areas that we need to work on, because that games like that can kind of have you thinking that you're good, and then you play a South Florida or whomever. So I'm glad that it happened when it did. Now, really quickly, I want to shout out our other sponsor, and we always talk about whitwillsports.com, and we tell you that your game day is not the same without the title towels. So be sure to visit whitwillsports.com and use promo code STANDARD to receive an exclusive discount specific to our YouTube network, the Bama Standard. So use STANDARD for the promo code. Go ahead and order yours. We do still have our shirts for sale in our Etsy store. I don't know if we've dropped that link in the chat. If not, we'll have it for next week. But like I said, those shirts are limited edition. We're going to start having some specific to certain bigger games. And then some of the trolling that we've done, some of the back and forth with these raggedy fans. I haven't seen Florida State, since they lost to Boston College. So, maybe they're realizing their place. They're probably trying to draft up another lawsuit, since all they care about doing is trying to sue somebody when they need to be worried about that $500 million buyout that they have. But
they'll probably sue Boston College for being too physical.
Yeah. All right. Like, yeah, they came in and embarrassed them. They feelings hurt. It's like, no, they just showed up and they
on cue.
Where he at? Yeah, no, yeah. Hey, he quieter now. He used to show up running that mouth up here crying and whining because they weren't in the top 4. Clearly, y'all have lost how many games back to back since, anyway, but I'm glad that you've learned to just, not say too much. So we'll leave it there as far as Florida State. But I do want to move forward to our latest addition to our segments, the Q&A. So last week, it was really good. We have some really good questions. I believe that we have some, actually, let me see. Yeah, we do have a few. So shout out to Jim. Can Milroe play more like QB like than dynamic athlete? There's been too many explosives play or punt. Okay, Dan, I see you nodding your head. I think you like this question. I'm gonna toss it to you.
Can I answer next?
Yeah,
that's a good point, and that comes with taking your check downs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Jalen. One thing I want to say that I saw him improve. Even though the fan didn't like it or whatever, he's in the second half he started throwing the ball away.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? If
True.
it's not there, it's not there.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? You don't want to be taking a 15-yard sack because you're holding on to the ball too long. You can always throw the ball away.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one thing I want to see him continue to grow in. He's holding on to the ball too long, and he's not seeing his progressions. So take the check down. You always got the check down. Take the hot route. You have to see the play before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
You want to look over the defense. You want to know who the hot guy coming.
But Dan, that's the anticipation. That's that anticipation factor of football IQ, right?
Right.
Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought anticipation, that's one of the makeups, of being having a high football IQ. And I thought we saw that against Western Kentucky. Yeah. I mean,
and you don't always have to hit the home run. You know what I'm saying? You can give them death by 1,000 cuts. If that's all they want to give you, take the check down. We got athletes. You know what I'm saying? Get the ball to a playmaker. That's all you have to do.
Yep. I agree. Hannah.
Good question, Jim.
Shout out to Jimmy Clay again, sir. Look, if you doing what you did like a month ago with all your super chats, we're here for it. Bama by 50. Let's go, Bama. Shout out to Jimmy Clay. He's like one of the biggest Alabama fans, not just football, but literally across the board. So thank you for the super chat. Hannah, what were you going to add?
I was just going to say, I agree with what Dan said, but I want to say one thing. I think Jalen has to trust his receivers more than he does. Because the thing is this, and even I'll say this, I think we need to do a better job running the ball. I don't think we need to be necessarily a deep bomb team, because you look at what happened when you put the ball in the right person's hands at the right time. They're going to do the work. Now, I'm not just talking about Ryan Williams, I'm talking about our running backs too. They don't get enough praise for how well they did against USF. If those guys wouldn't have scored, we wouldn't be having this conversation. They showed up and showed out, but that took Jalen Hurts trusting them to do their job. And I think sometimes as a quarterback, you have the weight of the team on your shoulders and you think you have to do all this stuff to make it happen. I agree with Dan. We don't have to have 75, 80-yard touchdown passes. We can have a 5 or 10, all we need is first downs. I don't care if we march down the field and take up time and score a touchdown. I don't care if it takes us 13 minutes to get down the field. As long as we score a touchdown, I'm happy. But I think so many times we're throwing away the ball or doing stupid things to try to make a big play when we don't have to do that. So that would be my only question is, I know A.J. McCarron got bashed a lot for being a game manager, but that game manager won us back-to-back national championships. You don't have to be the best quarterback in the country, to win national championships. If that's our goal, then we need to do what we're talking about defense, go back to the basics and figure out how can we score touchdowns consistently, win games consistently, and do so in a very reasonable manner. I think that's going to be running the ball more, and I think that's Jalen Milroe, like Dan said, checking his options, but also knowing when to run and knowing when to throw it away. That's big.
Yeah, and I honestly thought
and I keep calling him Jalen Hurts. I'm done.
Jalen Milroe. Yeah. I wasn't going to cut. I didn't want to cut you off.
Because I just talked about Jalen Hurts at lunch today. We were talking about our favorite NFL players.
Well, and that's the thing, because I think last week we mentioned Kobe Prentice and certain receivers. But I think we'll see them, make some dynamic plays this weekend. Shout out to Monica Petaway. Do you think we'll see them open more of the playbook, but not too much for Georgia to see? I believe we will against Wisconsin. I believe we're almost in a position where we have to. We talk about the Caleb Odoms, for example. We talk about seeing more of Kendrick Law, the Kobe Prentice of the world. Jeremy Bernard, his time is time. We saw him quite a bit in South Florida, but it's time, because I believe that there were certain promises to some degree that were made when he decided to transfer to Alabama. He's going to be expecting to get that ball. I believe Kobe Prentice, Kendrick Law, Caleb Odom for sure. You can't not use Caleb Odom. I just think they're trying to be creative with him. I believe we're going to see some of that double tight formation that I like to see. The CJ Dupree's out there with Robbie Oots, Danny Lewis Jr. I want to see Jay Lindsey out there too, but I don't want to just see them blocking. Like I said last week, Dan, we have to see CJ Dupree. He made some big plays last year. And when I think about at least the last 10 to 15 years when we won the national championship, we had tight ends make some huge plays. So we have to get back to that. That's a part of the standard. I'm going to toss it to you, Dan. What do you think about, are we going to see them open up the playbook more and maybe see some more creative plays?
Let me tell you one thing. We always say that it's vanilla, but you can't get more vanilla than running the football. That's what I want to see us do. I want to see us establish the run. You know what I'm saying? I don't care what we show Georgia. We're not worried about Georgia. You know what I'm saying? Let's run the football. Let's impose our will. Let's do what we do. Mm-hmm. We can always hit the big plays. That's been proven. Let's show something. Yeah. Let's show that we can matriculate downfield. Let's hit the run. Let's fire off the ball. You know what I'm saying? That's what I want to see. I could care less about us opening up a playbook. Mm-hmm. They open up the run playbook.
Yeah. That's true. The years that we won the Natty, we had those elite runners, and we weren't scared to. It made me think about Blindside when you said that when Sandra Bullock said, "Run the dang ball," literally run the dang ball. Like, do we need to make some calls? Like, I mean, I hope we don't have to get to that point, but we need to run the ball. Hannah, what do you think? Oh, and then shout out to James Knox. Roll Tide till I die. Crimson Dynasty, Bama Center Network family. Continued birthday celebrations. Thank you so much. I love birthdays. I think it's just. You got to have at least one day where you celebrate yourself and you celebrate your accomplishments and all that good stuff. But Hannah, what are your thoughts on, do you feel like we're going to open up the playbook?
Yes. I don't know if y'all ever watched Washington games, but this is a question that Kalen DeBoer was asked when he was still in the Pac-12. Okay. And he's not a coach that holds back, because he thinks that his teams are going to be so well prepared that the teams that try to prepare for his team aren't going to be prepared. I think he was asked this in the Apple Cup years ago, maybe 2 years ago, about maybe it was last year, if they were going to try not to put plays play against Washington State so teams in the playoff, wouldn't be able to see. And he's like, no, I don't believe in that. I want our team to play their best game every single week. I take that into consideration when I say this. I don't think Kalen DeBoer cares to hold things back from Georgia. I don't think that Nick Saban cared to hold things back from Georgia. The only thing Nick Saban did differently than Kalen DeBoer was he did not say who was going to be the starters like Kalen DeBoer did. But you know what that did? I think with Kalen DeBoer announcing things sooner, it took a lot of the targets off our back because I think people were like, oh, well, that we can move on to something else to talk about. Whereas you had this mystery box, everyone's like, I wonder who it is. Like, what, it's always a conversation. So for me, maybe we hold a few plays for Georgia, but I agree with Dan. The only play that we need to be playing is run it up the middle. Okay. I don't care. We need to, and I want to say something else too. We've got to control the time of possession for two reasons. Our defense doesn't deserve to be on the field 30 minutes in a game. Our defense should do their job and our offense should control the tempo. So for me, I think we're going to see a team differently this week. And I don't think it's going to be much different than what we see against Georgia. Hopefully we just see a really good team come out and show off what they've been able to improve.
Yep. I agree. And I think we have one more question. Shout out to GT18. Was the adjustment on the O-line late in the game? Just the coaching staff still adjusting to the players? I would have made the adjustment after the first touchdown that was taken away. Yeah, they definitely waited too late. I don't know I just don't know what they were doing from a coaching perspective. It was really ridiculous. Hannah, I'll kick this one off to you first. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot because I was kind of on the bandwagon of we should have taken him out sooner, but I think it was the right decision not to, because I think it really gave two things. I think it gave Formby the opportunity to grow, but I think it gave his teammates the opportunity to be teammates. And that's something that we haven't seen in a long time. I don't know if you were watching the sidelines, not you, but when I say you, I don't mean y'all. I mean like our fans, our viewers. But when he came off the field, I mean, the first guys that came to him were his fellow offensive linemen, like, you've got this, like slapping him back. Like you could tell they were trying to encourage him. And I think Kalen DeBoer was more concerned about creating a team dynamic than he was trying to remove him and put something else. Because I think he knew deep down that this is a team that Alabama can win, a beat, and that Wilkin Formby's performance. I mean, because the reality is this, we don't have the depth to just pull someone out and put someone else and then get in, like we've got to fix these mistakes now. And I think for me, it was the right call. And like I said, I was really upset with it in the beginning. I didn't agree with it. But as I thought about it more, and I've heard other players speak about the situation, I think it was very intentional and logistical on Kalen DeBoer's side to not pull him out until when he did.
Yeah, I agree. And I like how the other players kind of rallied behind him too. Dan, what are your thoughts?
I agree, Hannah. You definitely don't want to discourage them. You let them take it lumps. As long as you're winning, you know what I'm saying? We still the game was still under control, believe it or not. You know what I'm saying? So you want to let the young player take his lumps. But when time came, when push came to shove, we had to do what we had to do. We made the change. But yeah, you gotta let them learn. That's the only way you learn. You get live reps, so he'll get better from it. And but that takes good coaching too. To be able to be patient with players.
Yeah.
That takes good coaching.
Yeah, I agree. That was a good question. All these were really good questions. So just so that y'all know, we're going to continue having this segment throughout the season. So even if you think of questions, ahead of time, Dan?
Yeah, one thing, T take tonight, he's going to break down this stuff. Y'all want the questions to see what went wrong with the offensive line, y'all watch it tonight. It's going to be very insightful. I encourage all of y'all to watch T's take tonight.
Yes. And we'll be sure to promote the other shows after this as well. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, Dan. And now really quickly, I want to move to our predictions, score predictions and player of the game. So I'll kick it off. I have 43-10. I see 5 touchdowns and 1 field goal. So I have 2 passing touchdowns. I'm looking at Kobe Prentice and Kendrick Law. I feel like it's going to, because I feel like they're going to, kind of be on Ryan Williams. I don't necessarily see Caleb Odom just yet, but I more so see guys who have been here for a year or two, like the Kobe Prentice and the Kendrick Law. So I have 2 passing touchdowns. I have 2 rushing touchdowns, one by Jalen Milroe and then one by Justice Haynes. And I have 1 pick six. I think it's time for the defense to show up and show out. So that plus a field goal. And then on the offense, I have Justice Haynes as my player of the game. And on the defense, I have Malachi Moore, because I feel like the secondary, they're gonna go out and they're gonna shut them down early. So that's what I have. Dan, I'll start with you. What do you have as far as like the score predictions and then player of the game?
Okay, I'm gonna change it up a little bit from last night. I'm gonna add another touchdown to it. Okay. I got Bama 35-7.
35. That's
it. Close.
Yeah, we're gonna shrink the game. Fickell's gonna shrink the game. We're gonna shrink the game. We're just gonna get out, take the win and get out of there. Okay. But I expect Milroe to continue his record streak of multiple passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns in a game. So I give him 2 passing, 2 rushing. Then we get another touchdown somewhere. 35-7 Bama. MVP, of course, Jalen Milroe. And I'm going to go with Jihaad Campbell on defense.
Okay, Jihaad Campbell, he did his thing last week. He's all, but honestly, like I wanted to say him, but I'm like, I feel like we always say him because he's always doing his thing out there, But I agree with you. 35. So that's similar to when we played them in 2015. Yeah. I think that was around that score. Hannah, what are your score predictions and then players of the game?
I'm going to go 31-13, Alabama winning. I will pick Jehiem Miller for my MVP of this game. I think hopefully Alabama runs the ball and he has 2 or 3 touchdowns. And defense, you just took mine. So, who did you pick? Who did y'all pick?
I had Malachi Moore, and then
I'll pick Justin Jefferson.
You were going to say Malachi too?
Yeah. Well, no, I was
Jefferson only playing in the second half.
The what?
He only playing in the second. Wait, so they
that's right.
The first half?
Yeah. I forgot he got
the first half.
Tim Keenan the third.
Dang. Yeah.
We gotta go with someone. I want to go with someone different.
To be honest, both sides of the ball, they have a lot to prove. So, it could really be anyone. But yeah, y'all drop y'all's score prediction. I saw some people dropping theirs earlier, but go ahead and drop yours in the chat. And then as we wrap things up, so those are our predictions. Y'all are saying in the 30s. I'm pushing the 40s because I just feel like when you come off of an embarrassing game, and I'm not saying the whole game was embarrassing, but I feel like that first half, I was just like, you know what? Like, let me just, whatever. But I feel like when you come off of a game like that, you have a lot more to prove. And then plus we're on the road. So I have a feeling that we're going to hit the 40s. And I think our defense is going to do their things in terms of scoring. So those are our predictions. Be sure to go ahead and hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. And then I do want to mention, I know Dan already mentioned it. We do have Teeks Take tonight, 8:15 Central Standard Time, right here on the Bama Standard Network. They're going to be going over Wisconsin film. And then they're also going to do a film study on our offensive line problems. So if you want to get kind of like a more in-depth analysis, be sure to check them out. Friday, we have the Red Zone with Daniel Petty, Smoke Dixon, and then Hannah Stevens. So that was one of the newer additions to our network as far as shows. Saturday, we have the Bama Standard post-game show immediately after the game. So, of course, this is an earlier game, but we have the post-game show immediately after the game. And then Sunday, we have Sunday Nights Talking Bama with JB and Josh Tucker at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. So, got a full lineup. I think the only day that we don't have anything just yet is Thursday. So, every other day, mark your calendars, Bama Standard Network. So, be sure to tune in. And then I'll kick it off with Dan really quickly. Do you have any social media or other shows that you want to promote?
No, I'm not really on social media. Just joking.
I was going to say, what?
You catch me on X at the Final Whistle Dan. Catch me on Instagram, Dan James IV. Tuesday nights on this very network, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, the Final Whistle. And, of course, Wednesday night here with my great cast, the Crimson Dynasty, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. Other than that, y'all make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and y'all tune in to Tees Take tonight because I will be tuning in.
Yes. And one thing, before the season started, we had another segment, which we, of course, don't really have the time to do it now, but we would talk about Bama and other sports. And I know that y'all tend to follow other sports as well. We had a 4-star Amari Allen that committed on our basketball team. So that's worth mentioning. And then we also had, a class of 2025 edge rusher, Javion Hilston. He just listed Alabama in his top 7. He's football top 7. He just decommitted from Florida a couple days ago, so he's the number
Bama commit.
Former Bama commit, exactly. He's the number 2 edge in the 2025 class, so be sure to keep your eyes out on him. Hannah, any other shows or social media that you want to promote?
So you can follow me. I'm having a moment, so Justin can have to pop in the chat. The text thread got changed to the opening kickoff or the opening kick. So I don't know what the Friday show is called because it's like Monday, Friday, and it's supposed to go 30 minutes.
The Red Zone?
Is it?
I have Red Zone for Friday and the opening kick for Monday.
All right, let's do it. The Red Zone's Friday. All right, listen. They just made the group the opening kick, and I'm like, why has it been changed? So yes.
Okay.
The opening kick is Monday night at 7:30, and then is it at 7? Why do I always struggle?
You're good on a Monday.
Get you some sleep.
Yeah. No,
it's at 7. I don't know.
Yeah, because it's 8 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, so it's 7 p.m.
It's
Central
7
for Monday. Yeah.
Central time on Monday and 7 o'clock Central time on Friday. So Monday, if you missed it, we had a guy from Wisconsin come on, analyze the game. It was great. And then tomorrow we're going to kind of go over, not tomorrow, Friday. Good Lord, help me. We're going to go over our predictions for a lot of college football. So it's not really an Alabama show. It's really all of college football. So and I'll say this. I have not yet been wrong on my Vanderbilt picks. I said they weren't going to be the worst team in the SEC, and by golly, so far I'm right. I was the only one who predicted Vanderbilt to go 2-0. So, I'm feeling kind of good.
Yeah. What you laughing at, Dan?
They ran out of fireworks.
Yeah.
Really quickly.
They scored so much.
I know Chris ain't running his mouth. I know Auburn fans not talking now with Payne Thorne throwing 4 interceptions against Cal. Like, let's talk about it, sir. Your season was over before it began. Like, whatever Auburn merchandise you had, paraphernalia. Sir, I got a lot of missed calls today from Kane Womack. He's always bothering me. Look, the last team that we need advice from is Auburn. Y'all can't even advise yourselves. Like, how you lose to Cal? Like, y'all season ended before it started. We literally, did we not, like a couple months ago, talk about what their season was going to look like? Only 4 wins. Did we not talk about that? Like, y'all are the worst in the SEC. You don't even have the right to claim the SEC, sir. Y'all are kicked out. And we're literally trying to veto y'all. I'm so tired of seeing y'all on our schedule. Like, you literally bring nothing of value to the SEC. The SEC, we're a conference of winners. Y'all are literally the worst in the SEC. Like, you mean to tell me Vanderbilt is doing better than y'all? Are you serious? But y'all want to be the ones throwing 4 interceptions in 1 game against Cal. Like, what?
And the only advice he was asking them for is how to defend a turnover-prone quarterback.
I mean, it's literally delusional, but we always say the loudest ones are the weakest ones. So, I mean, that's what you see. At least Ed learned to just be quiet now that Florida State has lost 2 games back to back. You go over there to Ireland, you lose. You thought you were supposed to be in the top 4. You shouldn't have been there. You get blown out by Georgia. I mean, it's just, and then you lose to Boston College at home. Like, I mean, y'all literally have to be embarrassed for y'all to actually be quiet. And clearly Auburn is so used to being embarrassed that, I mean, y'all are just horrible.
I mean, Payne Thorne threw 4 interceptions last Saturday. So, you know what? Just put your money where your mouth is.
They can't.
And just give your money to Auburn so they can find someone in the transfer portal. I mean, honestly, I'm going to say it. Helen Keller could have thrown less interceptions than Payton Thorne.
I mean, are they not embarrassed? Like, imagine Alabama doing some mess like that.
They would have came out better hiring Dion.
Exactly.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't think they should have ever gotten rid of Cadillac. That was
the problem.
Cadillac Williams would have had this team in much better shape for SEC play rather than Hugh Freeze. Because the only thing that Hugh Freeze has done is brought attention, not positive, to the program. And the only other program with any more negative spotlight is Georgia, because their players apparently don't know how to not drink and drive or drive recklessly.
They don't know how to stay out of trouble. And shout out to Jimmy Clay for another super chat. We appreciate all the love, all the super chats. Ed, y'all didn't look that great against South Florida, so we look much better than Florida State looked against Boston College and Georgia Tech. We got the W's, y'all got the L's. That's what all you know. That's your standard. That Red Morgan runs his mouth. He can't cover at all. Sir, Morgan
took cover by leaving Florida State.
Exactly, and he can run circles around that entire Florida State offense combined. Like, don't get beside yourself. Come on now.
You know who I don't feel sorry for?
Who?
All the Alabama players that jumped ship and went to Florida State.
No.
Besides
Roydell, I feel bad for Roydell.
At least Roydell graduated.
Yeah,
he knew that Justice Haynes and Jehiem Miller, like he's his last year on the field. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't leave him, but
I mean, he'd have done better going to Vanderbilt at this point, but it
is what it is. Yeah, Florida State, sit down, stay in the back where you belong with your L's, with your horrible season. Like, y'all have no room to talk. Just be bitter by yourself. Don't bring that mess over here because we don't know those L's, okay? Keep that dust over there down in Florida State and deal with y'all getting out of the ACC. Y'all need to go somewhere else, but you ain't coming to the SEC like that. And Auburn, y'all the ones that's leaving the SEC pretty soon because you literally give the SEC a bad look and a bad name. But we'll go ahead and end things here. Be sure to like and go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. Roll Tide Roll. I think we covered everything. And then as far as my socials, you can find me on Instagram, beauty_of_intelligence. Everyone except Chris. Don't find me. Anywho, okay. Well, Roll Tide Roll, y'all. We're gonna blow out Wisconsin. I'm believing for it. And then we're gonna have our bye week, and then we have.
What was your prediction?
So,
What was your prediction?
My prediction. Who, you're asking me or Dan?
Yeah.
Me, 43-10, 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, 1 pick 6. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Pick 6. You're really hopeful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, we got everything that we need to do, everything that we want to see done. So let's just get it done. That's what we do. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone who's tuned in. Be sure to tune in this weekend after the game for the post-game show. And Roll Tide Roll.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Except for